I think Packet Tracer, or Cisco's Packet Tracer, is a marvelous tool to get you some experience in configuring Cisco networking devices such as routers and switches. Now, while I'm a big fan of Packet Tracer, there are some things, for lack of a better word, that aren't exactly the same in the real world as they are inside of Packet Tracer, which after all is a simulation. So let's talk about one of these things. So in the real world, if you want to configure a device, a real device, let's say we have a 2911 router, okay? And I want to configure this router. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my laptop, and while there are ways of remotely configuring, well, particularly changing the configuration of a router over the network, I personally think from a security standpoint, you're better off having to take yourself and your laptop out to where the device is, typically in a communications closet. Now, even if you're going to configure this over the network, I'm pretty sure you're going to have to at least do the initial configuration using the method that I showed you here. And we'll talk about the initial setup configuration in another video. So here's what we're going to do to configure this router. I'm going to go to connections, and notice the blue cable here is called console cable. So click on this, and if you click on the router, left click, notice there's a console. This is the console port on the router, and in a moment I'll show you what it actually looks like. And I'm going to click here on the laptop. Now here's my choices on the laptop in Packet Tracer. There's something called RS-232. Now this is what we call a serial port. Serial ports output 1 bit at a time, and this is in contrast to the something called parallel port. And in the old days, back in the 80s, when PCs first hit the market, you typically had in one of these an RS-232 port and a parallel port for your printer. For some reason, Packet Tracer only allows you to connect the console cable to an RS-232 port on this laptop. Now, problem is, you hardly ever, maybe never, see an RS-232 port on a modern laptop. The new console cable assemblies actually use USB, which USB stands for Universal Serial Bus. It's still a serial connection. So that's what you're going to actually use in the real world. For the purposes of Packet Tracer, you have to do RS-232. So now that we've connected that, I can click here. Well, let me show you what this looks like on the router itself. Left click, let's see, zoom in and move this over, zoom in a little bit more. Now that's all we can do. Notice right there, console port. And notice it's kind of a blue color. Every console cable I've ever seen has been blue, so that helps. So now let's go back to, we don't need this. We'll need this in a moment. So let's go back to the laptop, left click, and go to the desktop. Now this is another time when Packet Tracer is a little different than what you're going to do in the real world. In Packet Tracer, you're going to click here on Terminal. Now this is your terminal configuration, 9600 bits per second, BPS, 8 data bits, no parity, 1 stop bit, no flow control. So if you click OK here, this is what we call a terminal connection from the laptop to the router. So what you see here is actually what happened on the router, and this is the boot up procedure. And we powered this on, and this is what the boot up procedure looks like on a router right out of the box. Okay. Now, remember what this looks like. And if I go click on the router itself in Packet Tracer, if I go to CLI, I get this. Now this is exactly what is being shown in the terminal. If I can get it all in my little box here. So this is the same as this. It's just one of them's got a black background. So this is on the laptop. This is what you're going to be seeing when you're doing the, for sure, the initial configuration. I mentioned that earlier, and I think this is the best way to do it, even after the initial configuration, when you may have some changes to be made to this router. Now we will come back to this initial configuration dialog in another video. Now, the same thing applies here for switches. If I go and get myself a switch, 2960 is a nice one. It has a console port on it as well, and as a matter of fact, if I wanted to, I could disconnect here and go over here and connect to its console port. And although you can't see it, it's out of my video box there. There was a console port selection. Now, if I just left click on this and show you what's happening inside of Packet Tracer, here's what you see. This is, again, this is the boot up procedure, startup procedure, what you're going to call it, on the switch. Okay? Now, if I go back over here, my terminal's still configured. And I'm not sure it'd work like this in the real world, by the way. I'm pretty sure it would crash and burn. You'd have to reestablish this. As a matter of fact, let's just do that. I want to click there, back to the terminal, and click run this again. So this is after I connected to the switch and reestablished, reran the terminal. Okay. Now, again, this is exactly what you'd see if you were in Packet Tracer looking at CLI. Okay. Now, in the real world, with you out there with your laptop, you're not going to have this desktop option here. So let me show you what that looks like. What you're probably going to be using is something called PuTTY. Although there's several different programs you can use. Let me go here. PuTTY. Open that, and you get this little box. This is actually a really handy application. It's free. I'll make a separate video on using something about PuTTY. Now the problem is, to really show you how PuTTY works with a router, I would really need to be connected to a router, and that's a little tough because I'm sitting at home right now. But if you're doing this for real, just remember you're going to need a console app, and PuTTY is a good one, not the only one. And as far as the whole configuration, you can always Google this, and it'll show you how to do it. And once you get the connection established in PuTTY, it's going to look just like what we're doing here in the terminal app in Packet Tracer. So these are all the same. Now I'll make another video on more things that you can do inside of these terminals. So just as a review here, in the real world, laptop with actually in the real world, USB port, and this special console cable. Now, this console cable is actually a straight through cable. Now, I know you have been taught in your networking class that there's a copper straight through, and then there's a copper crossover. Now, when I say the console cable is a straight through cable, it truly is. Pin 1 here, pin 1 here. All I think there's 8 of them, 8 wires. Even with a what we call a copper straight through, there is a crossing of some of the pairs. That's just the way the wiring has to work. That's not true in the console cable. Now, one reason I'm telling you this is you can't use a Cat 45 patch cord as a console cable. They're not the same thing. So just keep that in mind. And also, a packet tracer shows this is blue. Typically they are blue. Not exactly this color blue, but typically it's what everyone I ever saw has been blue. And again, nowadays, instead of having an RS-232 connector on one end, it has a little adapter there that lets it use USB port. So I'll actually do some other videos on actually using this configuration to configure Cisco devices. So I can mostly show you in physical mode a packet tracer what this would look like in a communications closet. So I apologize, my recording view here, I tried to make my recording window such that you had the best view possible of the devices. But so what I've done here is I've added a table, and I'm in the closet. I've taken the laptop away. So now we can add the laptop, and let's see, we need in devices, laptop, and I'm going to put the laptop on the table. Okay, and now I'm going to go with the connections, and notice in physical mode these have changed. You probably noticed that before, but the console cable here is blue. Let's plug into the console port up here, and now come back down here, and I've completed my connection. So let me zoom back out. So this is what it would look like, and again, sorry for my resolution here, but you connect, and this is the router, and here's your laptop, and there's your crossover cable. So, and this is in the communications closet. Notice it says main wiring closet. So this is what it would look like in the real world, except instead of RS-232 here, you'd be connected to one of these USB ports.